Welcome to our official album review for JPEG Mafia's new album, I Laid Down My Life For You. This is his 5th studio album, and we actually did a live album reaction with our entire community. It was a good one, so if you guys want to check it out, hit the link in our pinned comment. But let's get into this, bro. JPEG Mafia, it's always going to be an exciting album experience. Let's start off with the artist performance. What did you think, man?
I think it was great overall, just because when you go into this album, I feel like there was maybe a different shift in tone in comparison maybe to something like Cornball or maybe even something like Veteran or something like LP. Like, it was very different from his last studio albums because I feel like maybe his raps and maybe his performances are becoming more and more accessible over the years. And that was something that we were talking about with the community, at least in our chats, was that, like, you know, I wouldn't be afraid to play this around the hose, quote unquote, for certain songs within this. And it's not necessarily all that throughout, the entire album experience, at least from JPEG. You're getting a lot more meditative performances from JPEG, example, on something like, I would say,
I'll Be Right There.
I'll Be Right There. I recovered from this. Even something like Either On or Off the Drugs. Like, I feel like those are performances from JPEG, and those are verses that, I really appreciate from a fan that is not necessarily a hyper fan of his music, but someone that appreciates his art, someone that appreciates his performances. Not only that, but you're going to get your classic hyper energetic sort of JPEG Mafia on songs like I Scream This in the Mirror Before I Interact with Anyone, even something like It's Dark and Hell is Hot. Like, those are more the quirkier performances on the album. So for you, looking at this track list, how did you like the balance of that? Because you do get both sides of JPEG throughout this project, and what did you prefer, let's say, for your listening experience?
Yeah, I feel like, as per usual, JPEG's performances are extremely loud, they're abrasive, they're super eccentric, and he definitely uses a lot of vocal effects and vocal manipulation, but I like that he doesn't rely on it too much, where he'll use it on a song like Jihad Joe, for example, to really amplify the experience. And on that song, for instance, his vocals are muffled and a bit fuzzy, but at the same time, he keeps up this punk demeanor and has this hyperactive presence throughout it, which is really enjoyable. Other standout performances for me, like you mentioned on I'll Be Right There, after getting the first 2 tracks that had more of these aggressive cadences, on that song, you're getting more of a somber tone, which was a refreshing change of pace within the track list at that point. Another invigorating performance for me came on New Black History, where he regularly switches between his usual tone and voice with a grimy lower pitch tone, sometimes from one syllable to the next, which is really chaotic, but also really really cool because it keeps you guessing as you go throughout it.
Another performance that I really enjoyed was on JPEGULTRA, his second verse on there. That was super cool because we're going to be talking about the Denzel feature in the feature section, but he's rapping at these high speeds, and I really like to see that from JPEG, is that he's still competitive with his raps throughout the album as well. You have certain verses on here where, like, he's rapping at these top tier speeds. He's not necessarily filling up his lines with, like, just bullshit that he's not trying to, like, let's say, fuck up his flows for anything. Everything is super concise. It's super well executed. And I do feel like it's such a like consistent performance overall throughout the entire project. There wasn't necessarily a performance where I was like, you know what? Like, I feel like he missed the mark on here. And I do feel like, with this one, and I want to talk about maybe a section of the album and the content where he was talking about the approaches with his albums. I feel like this one is maybe one of his most calculated albums as far as approach goes. And I really do appreciate that from him.
Yeah, I think this is, in my opinion at least, his best album. It's my favorite JPEG album. And I think, to go back to the performances, his most complete performance to me came on Ex-Military, where it's one of his most sporadic and unhinged performances of his entire career, because he's switching back between this aggressive tone and then some ASMR shit. So you're getting polar opposite tones one after the next, and you get also some crazy growls, some insane vocal inflections, and it just keeps you guessing at every second. But the reason why it's amazing and maybe not perfect for me is that I do feel like some of the hooks are there just for the sake of having song structure and not necessarily catchy or memorable. But that being said, I don't go to a JPEG Mafia album for catchiness and for sing-along ability necessarily, but I did like the hook on Vulgar Display of Power. That was a headbanging one that got you hyped with the go, go, go. So yeah, that's kind of what brings it down a little bit for me, was the hooks, but overall, it's an amazing artist performance to me.
For myself, I'm going to give it a great rating. I do feel like it's one of the stronger performances of the year as far as artist performance goes. But one thing I will say is this. When I go back to LP, or let's say when I go back to Veteran, one of the complaints that I did have is that, like, I feel like there wasn't necessarily the most evolution artist performance wise, at least with the flows that he was using, or necessarily with some of the performances. Like, I think they're all fire. I think it's super consistent, as I said, but I think that there could have been maybe a bit more room for experimentation, at least with his flows, right? Like, I was talking about, the song with Denzel. Like, I've heard that flow before. Even something like, let's say,
Loop
either
it and leave it, maybe.
loop it and leave it, either on or off the drugs. Like, these are performances and flows that I've heard on previous JPEG albums, but it was just nice to see it in a new context. But let's keep going on with this. Where do you want to go next?
Let's go on to the content next. And I feel like it's definitely difficult to get a focused track from JPEG. And I think that's the whole appeal of JPEG's music, is that you don't know what he's going to say or do next musically as you go from record to record. But there are songs with topical focus. And ultimately, like many of his albums, it's, the consistent theme is JPEG shitting on his ops. Like, that's a lot of what you're going to get.
Or
but
on his haters
but
and shit like that.
there is sort of like a lot of other JPEG albums, there's this loose concept that's woven into the album, and here the running theme is JPEG questioning his faith and being unsure if he wants to follow a god or not. And you get that, for example, when he'll say stuff like, on my knees in front of God, but I'm not even phased, on it's dark and hell is hot, but he won't really expand on the idea too much. Or on Ex-Military, he says, every morning I get down on my knees for a God that I can see. Or on JPEG Ultra, on my knees for a God who can hear, I can't pray to no God I can't fear.
Yeah, it's a very meditative album from him. I feel like it's one of his most introspective projects, and I feel like he was also questioning his own artistry on this project as well. Like, you go on to something like either on or off the drugs, and I do feel like that's one of the stronger writing cuts on this album. And it's cool because he's questioning his own catalog at this point. He asks himself, the first one was good with the beats, the second one put me in the deep, the third one was sick, no disease. The fourth one, I had to rush it to complete. I don't have no base, it's not a secret. So it was just kind of cool for him to get introspective in that aspect, where it's like, well, you're talking to the fans and you're able to give them just a realistic perspective of how you feel about your own catalog and how you've developed as an artist. And I feel like that's a really cool perspective. Of course, you're getting some Drake disses on this album as well, which is really funny. And
it seems like JPEG didn't want us to focus too much on the diss tracks with this project. He ended up blocking us on Twitter after we had just commented on the Drake disses. But I mean, what's interesting is that JPEG's been doing this since 2016. You go back to the Black Ben Carson era, and he literally had a song called Drake Era. But I get where he was coming from. I guess, again, he didn't want people to not focus on the album and the music itself and be distracted with the Drake disses, but you have to bring them up because it is one of the elements of the writing that stands out the most. And the first one came on It's Dark and Hell is Hot, where he raps, I'll show you a Drake, I ain't playing with kids. Decent wordplay, nothing crazy. Next up on New Black History, he says, I got that flavor, Jonathan Major paper, especially when y'all cashing out for PDFs and rapers, no drizzy. But apart from that, I mean, listen, like I said, he's been doing this throughout his entire career. It's not like he's ganging up with the other Avengers to come at Drake now that he's down. Like, that's not
it's
how...
like low-key been a core staple of his music.
It has
to be honest
been.
with you, because he's on the completely different
spectrum.
Side of the spectrum when it comes to music and artistry, right? Like, Drake is accessible, he's mainstream, he's made pop-friendly music, and I guess when you look at JPEG, it's kind of the opposite to a certain extent. And,
it is.
I value both of those, aspects of music equal, at least in my opinion, whether it's accessible or not. So I don't feel like it's a big deal for the album. I think it was like only 2 lines, but it was a writing highlight. But like you were saying, Lou, you do have him shitting on his ops on something like JPEG Ultra. You have him saying, I don't understand when people talk shit on me. They got to lead with a lie or some fibbing. All right. Friends act like they don't want to talk, then start begging for change. I don't know what it's giving. So it's not necessarily the deepest and most complex writing, but it's him getting in his own thoughts and talking about how people view him and how maybe people around him are maybe around him for the benefits only,
Yeah, and you're getting a lot of pop culture references and history references and a lot of name drops that are pretty hilarious, like Bronny James, who catches a stray on I'll Be Right There when he raps. These guys connected like Bronny for real, that nepotism won't help you in the field. Or Angel Reese on Loop It and Leave It. 5'9" knocking down hoes as tall as Angel Reese. I don't care. So again, the comedic aspect of JPEG is still very much alive on this album. You do have, I guess, your share of weak one-liners here and there, like I'm slim and I'm shady, but I'm not a stan. that was kind of a useless line. But then some funny ones like JPEG motherfucking Mafia, making grown men emotional since 2008 at least, and coming from such a wild and hardcore MC, it's not what you'd expect him to say. But ultimately, I do like that you do have your batch of songs that see JPEG rapping and writing from a more retrospective lens. Like you mentioned, either on or off the drugs, reflecting on his catalog, and even speaking about how he's to blame in certain relationships that have gone wrong, or even on the outro, which I really enjoyed. I recovered from this, where he goes into how, he's fed up of relying on others for help, and that he really wants to focus on his own self-care, and how he wants to deal with issues he's had with family members. So I liked seeing that introspection from JPEG, and I feel like I got it more on this album, maybe than on any other album he's ever put out.
That's very true. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like when I was looking at maybe the artist performance, I feel like, yes, it was similar to other projects, and that kind of brought it down, but I feel like the writing on this is low-key elevated from other projects itself. So with that being said, I think a great rating is fair.
Yes, it
is. I
is.
think the writing was great throughout the entire album, but where do you want to go next? Features?
Let's go on to the features. So JPEG chose to only have 4 features on this album. Of course, you have Denzel Curry, you have Vince Staples, you have Freaky, and you have Buzzy Lee. Let's start off with Vince Staples on New Black History. Comes in with seamless flow switches, raps with a dirty vocal mix over the Chicago house synths, and has some braggadocious bars like dudes don't get this good till they death. I loved seeing him on this beat, and it reminded me of that Big Fish type
Exactly.
of Vince.
That's what I was thinking about, right? Because there was a tweet that recently went viral where it was like, J. Cole can't rap on a beat like this. And yes, I think he can. But it just goes to show how like Vince could low-key find a pocket on whatever production you give him. And with this, it was captivating from his first 2 lines on the first verse, and he opens up the song and you're automatically buying into it. I think that's one of the best features of the year. Let's talk about Denzel Curry on JPEG Ultra. This was fire because there's kind of like a lead-in. Denzel does like a little intro. Well, actually, it's kind of an extended intro, to be honest with you. It's maybe like 30 seconds.
And an interlude.
And he's kind of like talking his shit and whatever the case may be. And then boom, bro, he comes in for this first verse.
Kills
bro,
it.
what? Yeah. Hold on a second. What was the... Yeah, here we go. Me and JP going APE. I got
monkey bars, but this ain't PE.
The way that he's able to connect everything
Then
together.
everybody said I got ADD, but it never add up. I'm a count past 3.
Matter of fact, all of this devil shit from D to MC, but it's guaranteed to make a rev run. Crazy.
What?
Crazy. The alliteration on this, on that little section of the verse.
Yeah,
is
just
stupid.
amazing setup, rhymes, and wordplay. And I just love the energy because, like you said, he came in with this sort of open mic, spoken word intro that was hilarious. Saying shit like, you know what time it is, we going around the world with it and inside your girl with it. And then, also comes in with a brand new flow that I feel like I've never heard from Zell. So that's always refreshing to hear. Easily one of the best features of the year to me. And I feel like every time Zell and JPEG link up, it's magic. Looking at Bald Remix, looking at Vengeance, they just don't miss together. We also get another breathtaking performance from indie singer Buzzy Lee on Don't Put Anything on the Bible. I love the psychedelic textures to her vocals on here. And the harmonies are absolutely stunning. I love that she had the main duration time on that song because she earned it. And it's actually Steven Spielberg's daughter. I don't know if you know that.
I never knew that.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
Buzzy
crazy.
Lee. Shout out to her.
And you know what's cool about some of these features as well is that most of them are actually starting off the song themselves. Like
Yeah.
you don't have to wait for them. They're not necessarily only small additions to the track. Like it feels like JPEG's giving them their own runtime, and then after that, he's able to add his own verse on top of what they've already added. So I feel like that was really cool as far as a curation standpoint. And then I believe you do get one other feature, which was Freaky. How did you feel about the Freaky feature?
Yeah, so Freaky on Don't Rely on Other Men kind of sounds very choppy. You can't really tell who's behind the vocals, and it just feels like JPEG could have just gone solo with this one. And to me, it's crazy to say this, but if Freaky wasn't on this track list, I would have given this a perfect rating for the features because I feel like all of these features are top tier and some of the best I've heard this entire year. So amazing rating overall, well curated, amazing chemistry. Like you mentioned, I like that you don't have to wait to get into those verses. They start off the tracks. But it just sucks that like one feature had to hold it back from a
that's
perfect
the perfect
rating.
rating.
That's what it is,
it's
man.
a perfect rating. So listen, amazing is going to be the rating for the features. But let's go on to the production. JPEG Mafia, self-produced. I mean, I believe Kenny Beats is also
He does have
on.
credits, yeah.
Yeah, Kenny Beats has credits on JPEG Ultra. What else do you have credits on?
A couple other tracks. I don't remember exactly, but I mean, yeah, you do have some helping hands here and there. But ultimately, JPEG has proven that he is a master composer at this point. Obviously, the beats on here are fucking bonkers. You're getting a lot of hip hop and rock hybrids throughout it. My favorite beat maybe comes on Sin Miedo, where you get this anthemic vocal sample that loops Mr. Mix's vocals and juxtaposes them with this explosive synth bass. And it's just so surprising how great the combination that he creates is between hip hop, rock, and then how it turns into this electric dance mashup.
It's beautiful.
It's something that only he could pull off. And this is prime proof that he's pushing the boundaries of what a hip-hop beat can be.
Well, not only that, but you're also getting these crazy sample flips. Like, there's also a whole other side to this album production-wise. Going to either On or Off the Drugs, you're getting this incredible Al Green sample flip, which is from 1973. Turn on the lights, excuse me. And just the way that he pitches up his vocals and the way that it's kind of looped all together, like, it creates such a sick backdrop for such a meditative performance. And I like the album in that regard as well, as far as production goes, is that you're getting such a different array of sounds and you're getting something that feels really good. Then you're also getting some like Brazilian funk sounds on something.
It's dark and hell is hot.
And like just the way that the drums are looped and the progression of it and the way that the vocals are sped up and the way that those like vocals are looped, it's fucking chaos. You know what I'm trying to say? And like that's what I like about this soundscape is that it's unpredictable, and I didn't expect anything less from JPEG on this studio.
Yeah, that was one of my less favorite beats was the It's Dark and Hell is Hot. You have the Brazilian funk sampled vocals that kind of sound like the Minions, and then you just get some 808s toppled above it. And yeah, I thought it was very creative. Again, didn't love it sonically, but another beat that we have to talk about is on Ex-Military. We get a legendary sample flip of After Laughter Come Tears by Wendy Reen, and it's the exact same sample the Wu-Tang Clan used on their 1993 cut Tears.
Is this the best beat on the album for you?
You're getting this sample, then you're getting the addition of like distorted metal strings and electronic synths. Like, I love that they're not just sampling Tears and making that loop. Like, they're doing justice to reigniting that sample and that sound for a new modern era and generation and giving it new life. So I love that he brought it to the table.
And I like that production as well, because I think that it really speaks to how well curated the production is on this. Because like you had said, like they could have just flip that sample, put it on the album, and left it there. But no, like you said, like you have these crazy metal strings that come in and out. You also have like just these fucking crazy drums too, and like the tempo switch that comes in with those strings, and like it almost brings you in and out of the song. You know, and that's what I really like about the experience as far as the production goes on this album, is that it's like a twist and turn. You're going down this fucking crazy rabbit hole of all kinds of different productions, and it's just a big soup, but it makes sense because everything is well curated and there's so much layering to all of these productions, and it's so impressive to see the way that JPEG was able to self-produce this and also have other co-producers, example like Kenny Beats, come in, but make it all work in one world, right? Like you had said, also you're getting these more manic productions on the beginning of the track list, but then as you continue to go down the track list, the album gets a bit softer and softer and softer. So I also feel like from a curation standpoint and a sequencing standpoint, the production was well executed upon. This is an amazing soundscape, amazing rating for the production.
Yeah, 100%, man. Even the gorgeous instrumental on either On or Off the Drugs. It's actually an AI-generated 70s blues song titled Turn on the Lights, which I was like, that's
Is it really?
crazy.
Because on the Genius annotation and through who sampled, they
credited Al Green?
They credited Al Green.
Maybe that AI-generated song sampled Al Green. Maybe that's what it is. But from the research I did, apparently, yeah, 70s blues song that was AI generated.
Yeah, look, I have it right here. Samples Al Green's 70s blues song titled Turn on the Lights. It was released in 1973, and apparently it was only uploaded to YouTube on May 13th, 2024.
Guys,
which is interesting.
let us know if you have more context on that. Another one of my favorite beats is on Jihad Joe, because you have this ominous horror movie-esque soundscape in the background. Then you get a crazy beat switch, and you get more metal guitar riffs and these emergency sirens. And I love the progression of that production, and that's how I feel about the majority of these beats, is that they're so layered, but every twist and turn feels not necessarily seamless, but it makes sense, and JPEG is able to match his energy to whatever sonic element is at his palms and at his beck and call. So I think it also helps his performance because, for example, on verse 2 of Don't Rely on Other Men, every end rhyme that he utters on that second verse comes out at the exact same time as the slaps of bass on that song.
It's
so
stupid.
it's really well executed. I think this is the best produced album of 2024. I'm giving it an amazing rating.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. But let's go on to the replay value. So, listen, it's all sunshine and rainbows, but it's a JPEG Mafia album. And I'm going to be bumping a lot of songs on here, but there's certain songs that I'm not going to be revisiting on here. And I do feel like, just looking at this review as a whole, I may think that this is what separates it from me, at least when I'm looking at the scores and the way that it totals up from a great project to an amazing project, because I do have songs on here that I don't think I'm going to be revisiting all that much this year. So for your replay value, what are you keeping? Like, what are you genuinely keeping within your rotation?
I feel like there's two types of people watching this video. There's, one side of the people that are saying, bro, the replay value fucking sucks because this music's going to scare the hoes. And then you have the other side of the spectrum that are going to have JPEG Mafia as their number one most listened to artist by the end of the year on Spotify Wrapped. I may be somewhere in the middle of that where it's a 41-minute listen. It's only 14 tracks, one of his most concise albums to date. Not really any tracks that lack quality or that I can pinpoint and say this song fucking sucks. So to be honest with you, just like nearly every other scorer on this track list, I have to give it an amazing rating, and I could see myself really bumping this album from start to finish. The only songs that I might not go back to, it's Dark and Hell is Hot, just because I don't love JPEG over the Brazilian funk sound, even though it was very innovative and creative. Apart from that, also maybe Don't Rely on Other Men. So like maybe there's two songs I won't revisit, but those songs aren't even weak. So for me to give it anything besides amazing, I feel like wouldn't be truthful to how I felt about the album.
Yeah, so for myself, I don't feel like there's a single weak track off of this album. I'm just kind of looking at my replay value. So what's going to be making my rotation? What am I going to be going back to? I feel like when you have strong cuts on here, like, a JPEG Ultra, when you have something like New Black History, when you have something like either On or Off the Drugs, I Recovered from This, Don't Put Anything on the Bible, these are songs that I'm going to be revisiting in 2024. But there are certain tracks that I just don't genuinely see myself bumping the entire year. So for example, something like Don't Rely on Other Men, I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of it for my rotation wise when it dropped as a single, so I won't be revisiting that all that much, even though the album is out now. Same thing with It's Dark and Hell is Hot. I appreciate the Brazilian funk production. I think it was creative, but I'm not going to be going back to that. Even I scream this in the mirror before I interact with anyone. Yes, I think it's creative. I think the performance is manic, but it's just that like sometimes I'm not down to get into that type of groove with JPEG. Something like a Sin Miedo, for example. I think it's a really strong cut off of the album, but the same thing, like I don't know how hard these songs are going to slap within my rotation. But with that being said, I still think there's a lot I'm going to be revisiting. I think that it's a really nice, concise album. And you know what? If you want to spin it from start to finish, you absolutely could. It's only 41 minutes. I'm going to give it a great rating. I think it has great replay value. But all right, let's get into my overall thoughts on the album. I think that this is arguably JPEG Mafia's best album, right next to LP for me. I'm being completely honest with you. I think that, you have the intricacies of a veteran, but you also have the replay value of an LP on this. I think you're getting some of his strongest ever cuts within his catalog with something like, either On or Off the Drug, something like I Recover from This. You're getting all-time collaborations with Vince Staples and Denzel Curry. Like, you're also getting the unpredictability factor of what stays true to JPEG Mafia's artistry. Like, there's so much going on one track list. He self-produced the entire thing with the help of a couple of people. You're getting so many different types of sounds and textures. It's one of the most creative albums of the year. I'm going to give it a great rating based on my score. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I feel like JPEG continues to be like hip-hop's biggest sonic disruptor, and I love how the beats feel more coherent on this album. I feel like the many layers of each instrumental feel more attached on this album compared to previous work. The beat switches and the sonic additions to this album just also feel smoother and more connected and maybe a bit less disorienting compared to his older stuff. Apart from that, you're getting unpredictability from the lyricism, from the production, from the instrumentals, from the features. And I think, the question is like, what's the bigger purpose at play? And I feel like with JPEG, it's just about moving the needle within the underground and within the general overview of hip hop. And I think what I'd like to see from JPEG Mafia on the next project, and what I think can maybe earn him like a perfect album in the future, is if he decides to have a more concentrated concept or narrative that's really, strung out from beginning to end and really focused. And I feel like that's something I'm yet to see from a JPEG Mafia album experience. So I would love to get that. But this album will blow you off your seat, bro. It'll viciously attack all of your fucking senses and make you wonder, what did it all mean? And I feel like that's the beauty of JPEG Mafia's music, is that even if you don't grasp, full clarity on some of his ideas, you're going to be stimulated by the sounds and by just the experience and the ride that he takes you on. So ultimately, amazing album rating for me, one of the best of the entire year. And I can pretty much lock in that it's going to make my top 10 albums of the year list. But guys, let me know in the comments, how do you feel? How would you score this album based on our scale? And which album should we review next? Thank you guys for watching all the way until the end, and we'll see you next time. Peace.